started as we mentioned in the keynote. There's other sessions going on throughout the day, all the way until Thursday afternoon. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, Kurt and Chris, to introduce themselves, and whichever one you fellows is starting, please take it away.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to share my screen and introduce myself at the same time. My name is Kurt Buehlmaier. I'm a modern work specialist here at Microsoft and a former high school, college, and semi-pro baseball player and coach. So this is kind of a marriage of something that I've been involved in my whole life and something that I do professionally, trying to leverage a competitive advantage in the athletics arena by leveraging technology. Chris.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Chris White, I too am a modern work specialist, along with Kurt. We're peers in the Northeast, focusing in higher ed and K-12, mostly in the New York area. Partnered with Steve. I happen to be a Rangers fan, though, so we have a couple of times a year we have some issues. I as well am a recovering athlete. I was a collegiate football player, Ithaca College. And this is the topic near and dear to my heart, being a technologist and also a recovering athlete. And so we're very excited to have everybody here today and know full well that you have our contact information if you wanted to dive deeper on any of these ideas or concepts, or if you're looking to begin rolling something like this out in your organization. We'd be happy to connect with you to make these ideas real. But essentially, Microsoft is known for its athletic relationships in terms of what you see on the sideline for the NFL and various other organizations. And what isn't mentioned is how our entire suite and experience ties directly into a competitive advantage for higher ed organizations. So we're going to walk you through those today. We encourage you to come off mute at any point and ask questions. You can raise your hand if that's your style as well. We try to make this as interactive as possible. So over to Kurt, and we'll get things rolling.
Great. Thanks, Chris. When we have these conversations with schools, we typically talk about them in a persona role-based way, and I'll walk you through that. What we're going to go through today is we're going to go through the student-athlete experience as well as the coach and recruiter experience, and we'll touch on what the experience looks like for the alumni office, for the admissions office, and for a fan experience as well. But like Chris said, we can do deep dives on all of these things at a later date. So when we think about the student athlete, that journey starts before they're at the school, especially in the competitive programs with the level of recruiting and research that takes place and scholarships and things of that nature. And it continues on once they've graduated by managing the relationship you have with your alumni network. It's very important to note that only 2% of college athletes will play a professional sport, and even a smaller subset of that will make that a full, lifelong, financially lucrative career. So as far as the school is concerned and an alumni relationship is concerned, and the experience that you're providing your student athletes, you really are looking to, there's a quantity and quality component, right? Like in an ideal scenario, you get some big time superstar, goes there, has a great experience, graduates, has a successful career in professional sports, and then donates back a ton of money, and you build a brand new arena, stadium, pool, what have you. But the reality is that 99% of those students are going to go on and do different things. But what is the power of that community if you're able to help them have a good experience, build the brand of the school, be good role models, be good representation, graduate, continue being a good representation of the brand, and donate back with time, with money, and with otherwise, and align them based on their strengths and their passions. Chris uses the term recovering athlete. I think that's funny because when you stop playing a sport, you kind of feel like part of you is gone. But if you help guide these students with something that they're passionate about, as well as something that they're learning in the classroom, as well as on the field or on the court, we see a significant amount of greater success for them professionally. So all of these data points here on this slide are opportunities to have a good, neutral, or bad experience with that student athlete. Technology facilitates the experience and enhances the likelihood that it will be a positive experience, whether that is with Understanding how to efficiently use your scholarships, how to onboard the student into your program, both academically and athletically, manage their brand with the new name, image, and likeness components that take place, helping them with their coursework, helping them be more efficient, managing their time, helping them with career components, leveraging advanced analytics capabilities to take your program to the next level, because what gets measured gets managed, and that's what all sports are doing right now. They're leveraging the analytics that are able to be captured by leveraging modern technology. Chris, I think you had an important point here to talk about with course selection and coursework for a specific area of students, right?
Yeah, sure. So, not every athlete that comes into the collegiate experience is necessarily prepared for the experience that they're going to be going through academically. So there are a lot of you folks out there who know of academic success teams that are available for athletes, and to help them achieve the level of academic success that matches what they're seeing on the field. So we've got a number of tools powered by M365 to help with that academic development process. Everything is something as simple as using To-Do or Planner, and be having it repurposed to keep assignments on track. Teams also has a learning management system component that ties into Canvas, it ties into Blackboard, which has some learning tools in there which can help those that might be your non-traditional scholars, and one of which is reading progress. So reading is a major component of the collegiate experience, and this will allow learners and their coaches and learning coaches to keep track of and to help them understand better why reading and the ability to read certain challenging text is going to determine their success or otherwise. So what Microsoft does is takes its learning components and injects it into the collegiate athlete experience to ensure that they're finding success. And what you're going to hear throughout the presentation is the availability of these resources, as they're really ubiquitous. And as I'd mentioned, if you think about To-Do or Planner with just assignments, or even the calendar function inside of Outlook, but not to mention the ability for the ability for coaches to set up asynchronous learning environments with Microsoft Teams to stay connected, to use the tools in a way that helps keep focused. So think of Microsoft as far as where it goes to for academic success, and there are a number of options for you.
So the first persona we're going to walk through is the student athlete. We can't forget, as much as we're talking about technology and how to take advantage of things for the student, for the recruiter, for the alumni office, so on and so forth, we can't lose sight of the fact that this is a college student, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and they're going to do college student things. Maybe they jump up in the morning and play some video games. For that, Microsoft does do a lot of work with esports programs, and we're seeing that become a larger part of college, the college experience, sometimes included in the business program, sometimes linked in with gaming development and things of that nature. And just want to throw out there that, we relate to the regular student experience, and we have things that tie into the esports arena. But maybe after Sarah wakes up and plays some Xbox for a while, she goes to class. And one of the biggest challenges for a student athlete is time management and location management. Chris and I were talking the other day about the fact that there were classes that we could not take in school. If a class didn't end by a certain time, you couldn't take it, even if it was only a 15-minute overlap. And there were a lot of classes that you missed out on, or professors that you missed out on, or experiences that you missed out on. And with technology the way it is today and the capability to do hybrid, I think that there are a wealth of opportunities to do things a little bit differently and open up the experience for the student athlete. So for example, if they've got a device like that, they could do digital inking, they can be collaborating remotely and in a hybrid environment. A classroom might have a Microsoft Teams room, and they could be using motion capture cameras and directional microphones and things of that nature, and people could be collaborating on a group project and on a presentation, whether they're in the classroom or out of the classroom. So it facilitates kind of an on-the-go experience, but it also allows people to reuse information. So I could take that digital inking that I might be doing, and I can save it and I can convert it to text, and I can share it with one of the people working on the same group who has a different learning style, and I could save that, and I could use something like an immersive reader product or a translation component if you have a student that's speaking English as a second language. So again, it just provides a better, seamless, hybrid, flexible experience for a student that has to be much more efficient with how they manage their time. And I feel like now with the technology that exists, they don't have to miss out on the opportunities that folks like Chris and I had to miss out on in our time in school. Want to call out that Microsoft is device agnostic. As much as we were showcasing a Surface product on the previous slide and talking about a Microsoft Teams room, most of your students are going to come to college with an Android device or an Apple device. Teams fits very nicely on that device, and you have the mobility that students need as well as the Microsoft security embedded in that product. So maybe Sarah messages her teammates on Teams and just says, hey, where's everybody having lunch? Or, did we change the time for that team meeting? Or, can someone meet up with me for an hour beforehand to work on some studying before we get into our team meeting, or whatever the case is. So you could have channels within Teams for student-only communication, player communication, coach to player, coach to coach, and it fits all kinds of use cases. When Sarah gets to the locker room, maybe there's a big Surface Hub device like you see on the screen there, which, if you don't have experience with that, is a very large touchscreen device that you would log into with your credentials and have all your Microsoft capabilities right there. You could do drawing up plays, physically like you would on a chalkboard or on a whiteboard. You could be leveraging text. And again, you could be leveraging an hybrid experience. So if you had another coach across the country doing recruiting, they could sign into that meeting and they could be active, and they could also be active on a whiteboard environment, or saving plays, or showing videos, or leveraging analytics. You could also have students that are doing that too. So maybe that class that was a 15-minute crossover that they wouldn't be able to take, well, maybe now they can take that class because they can pop in a pair of earbuds, open their phone, and be participating in the team call while it takes them 15 to 20 minutes to walk across campus into the locker room. Another thing, when we talk to college athletes, we hear, if I can't do my homework on the bus, I can't do my homework. So for your long weekend road trips, the opportunity to have something to do while you're on the bus kind of lives and dies with the device, the connectivity, and the software you're running at that time. So something that you might do, like Chris mentioned before, touching on career services. Microsoft has a product called Career Coach, and it's powered by LinkedIn. It facilitates networking, and it also helps students understand what are the supplementary components they need to what they're getting in the classroom to really make themselves marketable to an employer. And how do I find the employer that's the right fit? So when I talked about, hey, I graduated, I have a degree in business. Well, maybe I can go work at a large business firm, but maybe I can go work at a business company that's doing things for next generation athletes, or working with people in the Special Olympics, or an apparel company. And now I have my passion tied into that, as well as the skills that I developed in the classroom.
Yeah, one of the key components here is that it all comes back and ties into teams. So we mentioned Career Coach and the ability for a bus ride to be extremely influential. Not only can the work get done as it is assigned in teams, and they have access to electronic resources, but also they'll have the capacity to go in and build up their skill profile. Because one of the reality of college athletics is that not everyone's going to be a pro. Depending upon, where you go, I was a Division III athlete, and I didn't play with anyone who went pro. A couple of Hall of Famers, but we really didn't do that. We went to play the game because of the game. And so it's important for us to take our opportunity while we were in school to build out that career path. And since Career Coach is integrated with Teams, and also the power of LinkedIn, that's a really powerful tool that is tailor-made for athletes, because it can be done anywhere, any place, especially on that 9-hour bus ride across Western New York or Western wherever you're going. Teams really helps keep that all together and can empower not only the academic approach, but also the career approach as well.
And Chris mentioned teams. One of the things that we like to do in teams for our student athletes is provide a less heavy experience. So the same way that you might use your phone, you don't necessarily think about all the apps that are on it. You just think I'm on this device and then I'm leveraging the apps. The same thing can be said about teams. So I can be leveraging academic coursework within teams. I can be leveraging networking components within teams. I could be sharing information about social events within teams, and I don't have to go anywhere else. You have the mobility built into it, and you also have the security built into it. So there's a little bit of that safe and sound feeling you can get in a environment where you have students using a variety of different devices in different locations for different reasons. Another thing you might want to do is leverage analytics. So I have a friend that does analytics for the New York Yankees, and we talked about some of the things that he was allowed to disclose with me. And for example, with baseball or with softball, something you would want to look at would be contact rate, swing rate, exit velocity on different types of pitches in the strike zone and outside of the strike zone, because you could then tell a player, you swing at too many of these pitches, you swing at not enough of these pitches. Let's try looking at this a little bit differently, and we could increase your slugging percentage or driving people in or whatever the appropriate metric is in that environment. Again, this is something that can take place on the bus. So not only does it save time for the student, it saves time for the coach. The coach could go into a channel in Teams and share a Power BI dashboard with a player and talk to them about specifics and adjust these time over time based on games, different splits and characteristics. You can look and compare this with the teams that you're going to be playing. And maybe coach says to Sarah, hey, you hit the changeup really well, but you don't swing at it that often. And the pitcher that we're going to be facing really likes to throw that changeup a lot later in games when their arm is tired. So it's something that you can take and look at and have a snapshot in time, but you can also leverage this data year over year to understand what the ideal type of player is coming into your program. Is it somebody that runs super fast, jumps super high, and lifts certain weight? Or is it something that has a character and grit element to it too? And by putting it into an analytics dashboard, you can assign a quantitative value to a qualitative metric and really understand who's the best fit for the program.
Because as we're learning as we go through, data has always been in athletics, right? You've heard about Moneyball, et cetera, but data and analytics is a real thing. Now that we can connect and collect with that data, why don't we use that to the benefit of our programs? And one of the advantages of the Microsoft 365 platform is that you have access to a ton of data inside of your organizations right now. And Power BI can be the tool to help you build out those dashboards for to help athletes learn more about what are some of the processes involved for improvement, and also obviously grading. I was graded as a player. I received a grade for every game, and what was going into that grade? Did I not step in the right way? Did I not position myself? What is that feedback where I can make continuous improvement? Well, that all begins with data, but also it can be used by athletic programs to demonstrate progress for coaching staffs to justify something as small as new equipment to something as large as new facilities. And collecting, organizing, communicating that data in a way that doesn't make people want to run away from you is really, really powerful and really, really important. And Power BI is a core component of that. And actually, honestly, you know what, Kurt? A lot of the stuff we're talking about, they should already have access to at Office 365. This really isn't a sales presentation. This is a consumption presentation. This is everything from the reading progress, immersive reader, Teams, and Power BI. There are all free components associated with your experience in Microsoft 365. And the value and the benefit of that is that you have access to it and you don't need to secure it with outside resources, because we've got a very powerful security suite with our A5 up step and also A5 all up. So you don't have to worry about evildoers as much as you would if you had multiple platforms, like you have that tablet device with that specific app that came down from an app store. Where is your data? Where does it go? What are you doing with it? How do I secure it? Who's peeking into it? Can it be stolen? All that goes out the window with a consolidated M365 approach to managing your athletic programs.
So again, back to the reality of what's taking place, right? The center of this is on the student athlete. Sarah goes, uses the conversation she had with her coach, leveraging the data conversation, and hits a go ahead home run, and they end up winning the game. And then she gets back on the bus for that, hopefully not 9-hour, but maybe 9-hour ride back home. And wants to just have a conversation with her mother, with her father, with her friends, whoever, right? Can pop in a pair of earbuds, open up Teams, have a call right there. Maybe their friend recorded the video, maybe it's been posted somewhere, and they could share that experience, even though they might be, all the way on the other side of the country. And maybe it's not a game that was televised, because this is appropriate for, major programs as well as small Division III programs or community college programs or anything of that nature. It doesn't have to be a massive NCAA Division I major scholarship program to take advantage of these tools that Chris and I are talking about. We want to make sure we don't leave out the academic components, obviously, all right? They're student athletes. Student first is usually what you hear people say. Again, right within Teams, they don't have to go anywhere else. Maybe they get a notification prompt from their TA, from a classmate, or even from a bot to finish a certain homework assignment. What they're doing within Teams can also be captured in a product we have called Education Insights. Many of the components of that are also free. There is a premium step up, but a lot of it is free, where you can understand what your students are doing in the classroom. So coaches can reach out to professors and say, hey, how are my students doing? And they could say, not only are they doing well from a grade perspective, but they are leading conversations in class. They seem to be timely with when they're doing their work. They're not working at odd hours of the day. They're very good with communication back and forth on what they need. So they can leverage the modalities they want to, whether it's uploading screenshots, using digital inking, typing. So like for me, who has absolutely atrocious handwriting, I would never use digital inking. I would absolutely always use the keyboard, or maybe even someone that would use a talk to text functionality. So again, you have the academic work that can take place here. You have the ability to touch base with family and friends. You have the ability to touch base with your peers. Maybe you're going to jump on with a student that's back in the dorm that is not on your team and work on something like a third-party app that can be connected to Teams, like a Quizlet, and do a digital note cards and study for an upcoming exam. But again, taking advantage of that bus time. So Sarah just hit that home run when she gets back on campus, whether it was a 1-hour or a 9-hour bus ride. She probably wants to be a normal college student and celebrate. She doesn't necessarily want to go back and do all the studying, but she can do all that on the bus with that device, and she can be more efficient with how she leverages her time, which is a true concern of every college athlete. One of the other things that's important to note about being a college student is some of the mistakes that you can make at that age. And something that you can also do is leverage some of our Power Platform and create automated workflows and have governance around what student athletes do and how they represent themselves on social media. So you could do something like have a policy that says, hey, if you want to post about the game, if you want to post about the program, if you're posting about things related to the school, we want you to do it through Microsoft Teams and through this Twitter plugin or this Instagram plugin or whatever. But when that student hits send or post or tweet or whatever the button needs to do, it can get routed to an approver. That approver could be a real person, or if you really wanted to get fancy, that approver could even be a bot that does some kind of scanning of an image or of text for flagrant language, alcohol in the background, whatever it is, that not only could put the school at risk, but could also put the student at risk. And especially in the era of name, image, likeness, when brand is so important, we want to mitigate any possible damage that could take place. Maybe it gets bounced back and it says, hey, reconsider what you have here, or what is that in the background, or could you crop this out, or whatever it is. And again, it just mitigates the level of risk. It doesn't completely eliminate it, because I don't think anything does, but process along with the tools in place to manage something like this that I don't think we foresaw 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago. It's nice to have that in place and reduce the amount of risk that a school has, that a program has, and that a student has. Chris, anything else to touch on for the student perspective before we jump into the coach experience?
Yeah, just again, want to reiterate that you have all learning styles associated with athletes. Some of them are traditional, some of them are non-traditional. And we have a suite of tools to help those folks out. What we didn't mention is the fact that the applications for international students has gone up 80% this school year alone. So you'll have folks who may be coming in who may not be native English speakers as well. And we have tools that help that with that example, everything from within Microsoft Word for translation technologies and PowerPoint, but also Teams as well. And we have a free translator app that's available to help bridge the communication gap, where a student can speak their native language into their device and have it translated into English effectively. And I go back to reading progress as well. That's another tool that can help non-native English speakers to connect and learn the language more effectively on their own time. So be thinking about athletes from all backgrounds and how we can help them become successful, and the Microsoft 365 platform is available to help you do that.
Chris, could you throw a link in the chat window? I see Chris is throwing a bunch of links in the chat window, if you guys haven't noticed, that are super helpful. If you could throw one in on EDU Insights too, if you could find one, that would be great, since I mentioned it. So for the coach/recruiter, again, large program has a lot of coaches, people that are just focused on recruiting. Your smaller programs, the coach is the recruiter. And you have to do a lot more with a lot less, and this technology allows you to do that. So you could have somebody across the country watching a game, watching a practice, talking to coaches, talking to parents, and putting input into an Excel file, which flows into a Power BI, which in real time a coach can see when they're making decisions about who I should offer scholarships to, how I should answer this inquiry about recruiting, who I should tell another coach that we're looking for that's going to a showcase tournament, what positions we're looking for, what types of players, anything of that nature. So, you can use your device to record, you can input the data. You could even, if you really want to get fancy, compare actual mechanics with current players that you have based on data that you've captured, based on swing velocity, running speed, arc when shooting a basketball, stride length, anything of that nature. So again, there's different rules that I'm not 100% familiar with when recruiting, and what you're allowed to video and what you're not allowed to video. But even anecdotally, being able to compare with a potential athlete for your program and someone who's gone through your program and has been successful, that is something that is possible.
And also keep in mind, folks, that Microsoft Azure is a great repository for all of these videos that you're collecting over time. It's a wonderful, it's a really powerful tool to be able to take even something as simple as basic game films and keep an archive for many, many years, and putting that up in Azure, and having access to it. And then working with a partner to develop Azure Media Services tool to help you go through and analyze the swing, the kick, the dive, and provide real-time feedback. That's also services that are available through Microsoft as well, with Azure Media Services and Azure Storage.
So I mentioned earlier some of the qualitative metrics, like how do I measure that? So when I was in high school, as a freshman in high school, the top basketball player that was a senior was a kid by the name of Brevin Knight. And Brevin Knight went on to eventually play in the NBA for 12 or 15 seasons or something like that. So he was a huge name at our school. Brevin was not your typical basketball player. He was 5'11". He wasn't an exceptional shooter. He wasn't someone that could, jump over tall building with a single bound, but he put everything together in a great package, and he was a great leader. We were local to Seton Hall University, and he went there, and the coach said, "You'll make the team, but you'll never play." So obviously he didn't want that, and he looked for different programs, and he ended up at Stanford University, and he was an All-American for several years at Stanford. And like I said, played in the NBA for I think 12 to 15 years. And there were years he was in the top 3, top 5 for things like assists, steals, and things of that nature. So he had a very, very successful career. On paper, looking at a traditional high school to college basketball player, he didn't stand out with his speed, jumping ability, height, shooting, anything of that nature. But looking at the total package and what a leader he was and how he brought things together on the court and all those sorts of things, he was able to go and step into a program and become an All-American player and a successful player in a professional league for his full career. How many players like that slip through the cracks because they're not the prototypical athlete that you're looking for in that sport? And a lot of those measures come from qualitative components. Chris raises his hand. Basketball, for example, key indicators of success might be, is a player willing to dive on the floor after a loose ball? How are they reacting after they miss a shot? How are they reacting after a teammate makes a mistake? What do they do if they're taken out of the game? What are their parents doing? Because that behavior is often reflected within that athlete themselves. But I can put a quantitative measure to that, and I can say what's important. So year over year, I can look and I could say, okay, here's how they react after they miss, but here's how they react after a teammate makes a mistake. Which of those two things is more important? I have a choice here between these two players, and it looks like everything's the same, but here's the difference. Or do they crack under pressure? Are they playing in a small program and stepping into a big program is going to be difficult for them? So these are all things that you can look at, and maybe if you have that data that you can compare over a long period of time for the players that have been the marquee players at your school, and then again have gone on and represented the brand well and maybe donated or spent time and helped other students go to that school and make an additional impact on it. Maybe you can now use your scholarship money that much more efficiently. So I have one full scholarship. I need to use it on this one player, and there's 4 other players I can get because they weren't scouted because of the geography they're in or their lack of height, strength, speed, whatever might be a standard historical athletic metric. Day to day, Chris and I harp on teams. It's hard not to. In Microsoft, we live there every day. And again, it's kind of like it's a platform, right? It's a hub for us. Everything we need is there. I can plug in all kinds of apps, homegrown, third party. I can have peace of mind knowing that there's security wrapped around that. And I have the ability to collaborate and make things personal for me. So this screenshot is just an example of how something could be structured for a team, with a general communications channel, a private channel for coaches, a place to store videos and behind the scenes, whereas that, it might be leveraging Azure to store it, information about study halls and information about scouting reports, group calendars to understand where people are so that you can be as welcoming as possible when scheduling things that might come up. Information about community outreach. You might be doing some kind of program for, we used to, when I was in college, we did a program for a couple local orphanages during Christmas time. So that was something we would have been able to communicate very easily within Microsoft Teams. And you provides transparency and visibility. Maybe you develop an app, a very simple Power app that can help log students into study halls. And then coaches automatically get updated that their students have been there, and there's an audit trail. So if someone says, hey, your students haven't been going to study hall, you could say, well, look, it's right here. They've logged in. We've got information. Maybe it's even just a QR code on the phone that a proctor, scans, and then that gets updated in a database behind the scenes. And coming soon, we mentioned some of the other experiences. We talked a little bit about admissions. We talked a little bit about alumni. So those are deeper conversations we have in different areas, not only with college athletes, but your non-college athlete, but understanding where are they going? We've talked to some major programs and they have some data and they miss a lot of other data. So we've talked to major programs that have said, hey, the average GPA of our college athlete is higher than the non-student athlete at our institution. Well, where are they going to get jobs? And that school did not know where they were going and where they were working. Were they happy in their work? Were they satisfied? Do they feel like they were well prepared? Chris said he was a D3 athlete, so was I, but that didn't change the fact that I thought I was going to play first base for the New York Yankees. So that's what my immediate focus was on. I wasn't focused on what's going to happen next. What happens if I can't get to the next level? How happy would I have been if I could have been a coach or worked in some kind of area in player development or sports analytics or anything related to something that I had been passionate about and involved in my whole life, that even though I might have had to stop physically, I'd be able to continue doing as something that was a job and wouldn't feel like a job. So I'd leverage everything that that institution gave me in the classroom and on the field, but also do it in a way that I could feel good about. And we talked about career coach briefly. That would be a way for a career services person to have a conversation with a student athlete and say, hey, you might not be able to take advantage of some of the things that the non-student athletes could do. I couldn't take advantage of some of the internships and summer programs that some of my peers did when I was in school. But what I was learning from a competition perspective, from a confidence perspective, from a teamwork perspective, holding myself to a higher standard, all of those things were extremely valuable and have been extremely valuable to me in my career. But how did I articulate that on a piece of paper? Right. So that's something that, again, there's data that exists, and working with the professionals at an institution can help these students surface that information so they can more effectively market themselves once they graduate to prospective employers. So it helps, again, in the full spectrum, starting with admissions and then ending with alumni management. And the fan experience. We can't forget about the fan experience. What is the opportunity there to drive money into the program, drive good community relationships? And when we talk about Microsoft, there's a lot of different capabilities that our technology can provide. Most of what we talked about here today is free and available with your standard M365 offerings. And then some of them are very basic. You could go and tomorrow set up a Teams channel for your coaches and for your players to communicate through. You could have instant impact and kind of ease of use. And then there's stuff on the very high end, cutting edge of technology, which includes some of the analytics components, or it could even be leveraging, virtual reality to give people different tours. Imagine putting on a headset and walking on a field or walking on a court and being able to see, a spot that you stop on, and this is where so-and-so hit a game-winning shot or broke a record or something major happened there, and be able to kind of immerse yourself in that experience. What is that like from a recruiting perspective? Does that give you the advantage when you get that student there and they're able to kind of, relive an amazing experience by leveraging technology? Or it could be something as simple as, hey, you want the local people to show up to the events, and maybe the difference between someone who came once and never came again and someone who ends up buying season tickets and is there all the time and brings their friends and family members is how long they had to wait for a hot dog and a soda. And maybe something as simple as having an app that showcases what the wait times are at the different concession stands allows people to have a better experience. Maybe being able to put in their favorite player and having some kind of differentiated experience on their phone and on their device when they're at the game and afterwards is what keeps them coming back and keeps them involved in the program and builds a solid fan base that evangelizes the program. Again, not every program has massive amounts of funding. When I was in school, we had to do all kinds of fundraisers to get new uniforms. The ones we had were pretty rough. So being able to, provide different streams of income into the school through an enhanced fan experience that can take place in many cases with something very, very simple and streamlined that you can do on your end with something like a Power App that a fan can leverage on their side on their existing phone. Chris, anything I missed there with alumni, admissions, or fans that you wanted to touch on?
No, just the want to reiterate the fact that getting all of your data to work together in a meaningful way is important, and the best way to do that is to keep it all on the same platform because it's easy to share out, it's easy to report on. Using Dynamics and Power Apps, you can have a really powerful, personalized experience. Everything from how many soda cups were sold during a particular event to the location of ticket holders and where they're coming in from, and all of that information can be massaged and brought together when it's all in the same platform. It's a lot less work to use that data to empower future decisions regarding your fan base, but also the overall fan experience. So everything from supporting learners through their process to communication and collaboration to having a premium fan experience all in one platform, all secured by Microsoft's Zero Trust platform, really presents a compelling argument to consider Microsoft for your all-up solution for your athletics and the athletics experience.
Great. And I think that leaves us with just about 15 minutes for questions and comments if folks want to do that. Steve, do they have the capability to come off mute and chat or put stuff in the chat?
I believe I can change that. Let me do that real quick. I am doing it right now, so as I'm doing that, people will be able to come off mute. So if anybody's got any questions, please do come off mute. Caden, while I'm doing this, is there a way for you to put the link in the chat again for the follow-up survey?
Yep, I was actually just doing that.
All right. There we go. Everybody should have the ability to come off mute if they wanted to.
All right. Well, if there are further questions, I'm putting my email in the chat, and I'm going to try and actually spell Microsoft correctly.
Oh, that'd be helpful.
Because that usually works better.
Typically, yes.
Not always, but usually. And if people have questions after they digest this information, Chris and I are always happy to chat about this and what we've seen happening in other areas, and just some of what's possible. And like Chris said, a lot of the conversations end up being about streamlining because there's different pieces and products that do certain things, but not necessarily one company that can offer kind of a full end-to-end component.
All right. On that note, let me just pull up the agenda here real quick. The next session will begin in about 15 minutes, and that's going to be confidential VMs. Your data is protected. So I'm going to be talking about how to probably more from the research side of the house, but yep, we're going to be talking about virtual machines and how to make those confidential. And at this point, I'm going to turn off the recording.